Tonight on World in Action, the human cost of the struggle to control the holy city. While rules and red tape make Palestinian families homeless, secret millions from America fund this Jewish sect to take over Arab properties, bringing the city of peace to the brink of war.
These people are extremists, are acting wrongly. I don't think that they contribute anything to the unity of Jerusalem and to the future of Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, at the heart of the Middle East conflict. A city 2/3 Jewish and 1/3 Palestinian, both struggling for the same land. Behind the headlines of riots and bloodshed is a real story of discrimination. Israeli law, not military force, is depriving Palestinians of their homes and their basic human rights.
The needs of one part of the population only have been dealt with, and that's the Israeli population. The needs of the Palestinian population have been neglected terribly.
Two tents and a freight container are now home for the Abu Nijmeis and their 13 children in Palestinian East Jerusalem. They've fallen foul of Jerusalem Council's planning laws. 3 years ago, soldiers and an officer arrived to forcibly demolish their home.
I told him it's a disgrace. I have 13 children, where can I go? There's no houses to rent. I saw they were going to demolish the house regardless. I had some money inside. I asked them to allow me to get the money and the jewellery.
They refused to let her back in the house again. They shouted at her and beat her up. She was unconscious for 48 hours.
The original house was bulldozed with all the family's possessions still inside. They were fined 15,000 shekels, £3,000. The family's land was not in an area where the council allowed development. But most of East Jerusalem is the same. Palestinian construction has been forbidden in 90% of the area. Much of the rest is set aside for parks, most still unbuilt. So there is almost nowhere for new Palestinian homes. Now the Abu Nijmeis have been told their temporary home in the freight container is also to be bulldozed.
You must understand that in East Jerusalem the Arab residents do not want to live in densely inhabited areas, which the Western world call high-rise buildings. They want to carry on living in houses in rural areas. So naturally fewer people can benefit, and that's one of the problems of housing in East Jerusalem. There is land, there are plans, but they don't want to build dense high-rises on these sites. It's just the same in every city. They find it difficult because they have a different mentality.
In reality, red tape means that Israelis are allowed to build bigger and higher properties than their Arab neighbours. The draconian use of planning laws is seen by many as an attempt to push the Palestinians out of the city.
It's fair to say that for the overwhelming majority of the Palestinian residents of East Jerusalem, they're confronted with a very cruel dilemma: to condemn themselves and their families to live in subhuman conditions, to build illegally and run the risk of criminal prosecution, or to leave the city. A fourth option does not exist.
The Israelis and Palestinians have been struggling to control the same land for decades. The State of Israel was formed in Palestine in 1948. Jerusalem was divided. Israel controlled West Jerusalem. East Jerusalem was under Jordanian rule. Then in 1967, the Israelis invaded Jordan and occupied East Jerusalem and the West Bank, the land that ran to the Jordan River. A United Nations resolution declared Israel should withdraw its troops and drop its claim to the occupied territory. The Israelis ignored it. Since 1967, the Israelis have been building huge housing estates around Jerusalem and the occupied territories, often on land seized from Palestinians. The Israeli government has supported the building of more than 40,000 homes with proper sewage and water supplies, many for incoming Jewish settlers from around the world. But less than 600 homes have been built for native Palestinians. For the new Jewish inhabitants of a neighborhood like Ramot, it's a pleasant life.
I moved to Israel with my husband, my 3 children, 6 years ago. We felt that it was important for the children to have a Jewish identity in the Jewish country.
We grew up at home with the idealism that we should come to a Jewish country and live with our own people. So I came, and 5 years later I met my husband, who's from London. I married here, we moved to this neighborhood to Ramot.
The government does give you new immigrants help, they give rental subsidies and so on. If we were interested in getting a mortgage, you have 7 years from the time you move to Israel to be able to get a government loan.
For Palestinians in East Jerusalem, it's very different. Mohammed Carmel is 45. He was brought up in a house built on the land where he sits today. When Israel invaded East Jerusalem in 1967, his house was bombed and he lost his hand.
In 1967, fighter planes attacked us. The planes hit us and our house. My hand, my eye and leg were injured, and also my stomach. My mother was killed. I'd done nothing to cross them. I didn't even complain against the Israeli government. But I should now.
2 years ago, Mohammed rebuilt the house that had been bombed by the Israelis. By then, the land had been designated a green area. Jerusalem Council soon found out.
They asked me, "Why have you done this? It is forbidden." We told them it was an old house. I had removed the old house and built a new one.
It's just a restoration.
He said, "No, you can't do that."
Mohammed was taken to court and fined 30,000 shekels, about £6,000. But after hearing the story of the bomb, the judge reduced the fine.
He also said I had to demolish my house with my bare hands.
If not, they would bring a bulldozer and we would have to pay for it.
It was too much. I told him I'm not going to demolish my house. I started shouting and swearing at him. I told him I cannot pay. Where am I going to get money?
Mohammed was sent to prison for 5 weeks. Now the family of 12 live in a couple of rooms next to their demolished home. Their neighbours' houses are also under threat of demolition. But Palestinians can't move outside Jerusalem, or they'll lose their land and the right to visit or work in the city. This recent amateur video shows Israeli border police at the city boundary beating up Palestinians who want to travel into Jerusalem from the adjoining West Bank. Most Palestinians are regarded as foreigners by the Israeli government. Even those still living in Jerusalem feel their right to stay in the city they were born in is under threat.
The problem of residency is the essence of the conflict here. And I think that Jerusalem can be the symbol of the conflict, the symbol of the problem, and perhaps the symbol for the future. Because I don't believe the Palestinians will give up Jerusalem or their rights in Jerusalem. But by the Israelis, they are considered people who have no rights whatsoever.
In contrast, Jewish people have an automatic right to emigrate to Israel wherever they are born. But Jews too have paid the price for the unequal struggle for Jerusalem. Last spring, Muslim suicide bombers blew up 2 crowded commuter buses. Further restrictions on Palestinians inevitably followed. The Israeli nation mourned the 41 dead. Politics and religion go hand in hand in Jerusalem. The Israelis want to establish the city as their capital, under their control. But the city is sacred to 3 different religions. It holds the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the tomb of Jesus Christ. It is dominated by the Dome of the Rock, revered by Muslims as the place from where Muhammad went to heaven. And to the Jews, the site is an equally sacred place. It's the location of Solomon's temple. The Wailing Wall, their holiest place, is a perimeter wall of that original site. Silwan, the site of the ancient city of David, another place holy to the Jews. But it's also an established Palestinian area. One night in October 1991, the inhabitants became the victims of another Israeli law used to seize their property. As the people of Silwan slept, armed soldiers began evictions.
They started to break in the door. We opened it. My children were sleeping. They jumped out of bed. The soldiers forced their way in and said, "Come on, get out of here." I said, "What do you mean, get out? Why should I? It's my home."
It was raining, snowing, and and she had no place to do. We put a tent here to stay in the tent, and they refused the tent to stay in here.
The evicted families found their homes handed over to an extreme Jewish settlers group called Elad. 5 years on, Mrs. Kara'in is still locked out, while the battle for her home continues in the courts. She and others like her fell foul of Israel's absentee property law. Property can be seized if the owners have been out of Israel in the neighboring Arab states or the West Bank at any time since 1967. A government inquiry was set up into the Silwan affair. Its report, the Klugman report, revealed the illegal funneling of government funds to the settlers, and that in some cases false statements of ownership had been used to seize properties unlawfully.
Tens of millions of illegally allocated government dollars were turned over to the settlers. There was systematic use of false testimony. There was abuse of power. There was conflict of interest. There were indications of financial misfeasance.
The Klugman report also revealed the secret activities of another religious group, Ataret Kohanim, which is moving as many Jewish families as possible into the Muslim quarter of the Old City in Jerusalem. Ataret Kohanim was helped by a government department to identify buildings that could be taken over under the absentee property law.
What they did, Klugman report did say, was that certain government officials cut corners to help us out. We only asked for help. It was the government's decision how to help us. And as I said, they did nothing wrong because no one's been accused of anything.
Soon the secret government money dried up and foreign donors stepped in. And the biggest American contributor was Dr. Irving Moskowitz, a multimillionaire with a surprising source for his funds. Charity donations from Dr. Moskowitz helped pay for this Ataret Kohanim yeshiva, or religious school, in the heart of the Muslim quarter. The group have already moved 60 families into the quarter and say they have another 300 on their waiting list. Their mission to establish a Jewish community in an Arab area sounds innocent enough, but this is Jerusalem. Who controls the old city is the most sensitive issue on the peace agenda.
The fact that we live here prevents dividing Jerusalem once again, and it's a political agenda. It's not a human agenda. Our purpose is to bring back Jewish families to this area, to bring back Jewish life to this area, so that this area will remain a Jewish community and part of the capital city of Jerusalem. The fact that today it's called the Muslim quarter does threaten to bring about some kind of division within the old city, and we're here to make sure that that Jerusalem remains united.
Dr. Irving Moskowitz set up a charity foundation in America that allows him to channel millions of dollars tax-free to Israel. Between 1987 and 1994, the Moskowitz Foundation donated a total of $2.3 million to the American branch of Ataret Kohanim.
What's your relationship with Dr. Irving Moskowitz?
I prefer not to go into any specific names as far as our donors go. He's one of our donors, as many others in the United States and all throughout the world, but if you want details, you'll have to ask our donors, not us.
World in Action asked Dr. Moskowitz to comment about his charity donations to Ataret Kohanim. Neither he nor his American lawyer returned our calls. We wrote to Dr. Moskowitz at his waterside home in Florida, but he didn't reply.
Maybe he's the person who never understood that this city, united or not, depends who's talking, has a third of the population are Palestinians. He has to understand that as a Jew, his thoughts, his intentions are driving out a third of the population, not caring whether they're alive or dead, as long as he has his holy city, is something that a Jew should never do. Nobody should do, especially not a Jew.
While Jewish people can buy in the Muslim quarter, the law prevents Palestinians from buying in the Jewish quarter. Ataret Kohanim has been buying up Arab properties for a decade. They've moved in next door to Sami Sidawi's family. Like others, he's experienced the group's direct purchasing methods.
A Jew came. He lived in the Ataret Kohanim building. He brought a bag full of dollars and offered it to me. In the bag was a blank piece of paper. He said, "Take this paper to your father and get him to sign it or make his mark on it, and the dollars are yours. They are yours to do what you want with. You can tell your family later." We had an argument and I kicked him out.
Since refusing to sell, relations with the neighbors deteriorated rapidly.
That's Ataret Kohanim over there. They covered stones in glue, set them on fire and threw them at us from their house, as well as bottles, anything. They set a house on fire like this. They have attacked us and our neighbors several times. They smashed up my neighbor's house. They burnt their washing with the glue-covered firestones. They also set their furniture on fire. We bolted the door downstairs and they started shooting at us with guns from the Ataret Kohanim building.
The families had to pay for a security grill to protect themselves from attack.
I have found many times that they don't know how to distinguish between our yeshiva and other yeshivas here in the area that don't belong to us, or other institutions or other types of people. To all, they sort of generalize, say, religious Jews or settlers or whatever, and they don't know how to distinguish. Rock throwing of our students upon our Arab families here, it has never happened to the best of my knowledge.
In 1993, Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat and then Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin signed the peace accords. But extremist Jews like Ataret Kohanim are trying to undermine the peace process because they fear it gives too much to the Palestinians.
I believe that such a group like Ataret Kohanim is acting against the national interest of Israel. If we believe that under all circumstances Jerusalem should continue to be united and under our sovereignty, by irritating, by provoking the Palestinians who live there, you actually harm this cause and invite international criticism. These people are extremists, are acting wrongly. I don't think that they contribute anything to the unity of Jerusalem and to the future of Jerusalem.
In the Holy City, even a perceived threat to a holy site can cause bloodshed. Last September, the Israeli government opened a new part of a tunnel considered holy by the Jews. The problem was it ran under the Muslim quarter. The new tunnel exit was in the heart of Arab East Jerusalem. It provoked an outcry from the Palestinians, who believed the tunnel could undermine the foundations of their mosque, the Dome of the Rock.
This is a crime, a big crime against our religious and holy places. And it is completely against the peace process.
71 people died in the riots following the opening of the new tunnel exit. 57 Palestinians and 14 members of the Israeli armed forces. The tunnel would never have opened without charity donations. Again, one of the major donors was Dr. Irving Moskowitz. He and his wife are named on a plaque inside the tunnel. World in Action set out to discover just where Dr. Moskowitz's charitable foundation gets its money. It's raised here in Hawaiian Gardens, one of the most deprived areas in Los Angeles County, USA, half a world away from the religious conflict in Jerusalem. But Hawaiian Gardens has its own problems.
Hawaiian Gardens is probably the second poorest, if not the poorest city in the county of Los Angeles. Our birth rates are out of control. Our drug Alcohol incident rates are very bad. Domestic violence, very, very high for a city this size. We're a teeny-weeny city of 9/10 of a mile with major league problems.
Things are so bad that today the Coalition for Youth Development is giving a free pancake breakfast for local people. But this is where the Irving Moskowitz Foundation makes its millions. The money comes from this bingo hall. The Moskowitz Foundation was given a license to run it in 1988. It's very profitable. In 10 years, the charity has amassed some $40 million in its bank account. By law, the foundation gives the city 1% of its annual profit, around $330,000. It also funds local causes, but much of the profits find their way to Israel.
We were pretty outraged to find out that most of the money was going not only out of this area or out of the state, but out of the country. We think that the money has not been equal to what it should be because we have a need. If we didn't have a need, I think it would be a little different, but the needs are here, they're obvious.
Dr. Moskowitz has a new scheme to make millions more out of Hawaiian Gardens. It's a poker club to be built on this site in the city. The club's expected to make $100 million a year when it's up and running. The city of Hawaiian Gardens will get $10 million annually. The rest will be at the disposal of Dr. Moskowitz. And World in Action has discovered he set up another charity to send more money to Israel. In the last few years, it's received over $2 million of bingo charity money to buy Arab properties.
There's this rich American guy, rich out of gambling money. He knows Jerusalem is a huge barrel of gunpowder, and he sits across the sea, across the ocean, with a huge box of matches, and he throws them one after another by financing these fanatic moves that they operate here, and he's not going to have to pay the consequences. His children are not going to get killed. He himself won't be troubled. Okay, the ones who are going to pay the price are us and our families and our friends.
But Dr. Moskowitz keeps on buying. He purchased the land for this Orthodox Jewish yeshiva on the Mount of Olives. And he's bought this building in East Jerusalem, the Shepherd Hotel, and land in the Gaza Strip. Last month, we discovered his millions were behind plans for a new Jewish settlement, 132 homes, here in Ras Al Amoud in East Jerusalem. It's the first time approval's been given in the city to build Jewish homes right in the heart of a Palestinian neighborhood. Only if the Palestinians agree to this plan will they be allowed to build too. It's political dynamite.
The Arab population is being held hostage. They were not allowed to build until Dr. Moskowitz's plan is going to be approved. Dr. Moskowitz's plan allows for building 3 times as much on a piece of property as the Palestinian neighbors are. It's blatantly discriminatory. Ras Al Amoud, the Shepherd Hotel, the Mount of Olives, all of these are places which potentially can be the next tunnel affair. And people to whom the welfare of the city is dear must look with great concern about his activities.
The new settlement will be built on a hill above the demolished home of Mohammed and his family.
They are telling us you should move out of here. They are putting pressure on, so all these people will move out. Where will they go? The West Bank? The Israelis will grab the land and they will build houses, and they are allowed to build 9 or 10 floors. It's a lot, without any problem. But Arabs are forbidden.
We can't even build a single room.
Why are we prevented, but they are allowed?
Aren't we human beings like them?
No, we are forbidden. It's Greenland.
While Palestinians feel they are second-class citizens in their own city, peaceful coexistence will be just a dream. And the struggle for Jerusalem will continue, while dollars, not peace negotiators, decide its future.